Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Tiny Fibre Studio. This is episode 12 of a podcast about knitting, spinning, and specifically about me attempting to become a more purposeful spinner. So in this episode, I've got lots of projects to catch up with you about, and I'm also going to be announcing a few changes to this channel. Don't worry, I'm not going anywhere, but I'll explain the details a little bit later on. So I am delighted to say that my Mojo has made a comeback. Thank goodness for that. That was a long time without any Mojo at all. I have a little table next to me full of stuff that I've been working on this week. I'm on one of my weeks off from work. I'm in the very fortunate position that I can take a week off work every month, which is fantastic from the point of view of rebooting my mental health and also allowing me to get on with some of those projects that have maybe been languishing for a little while. And I've got through a lot of projects. Down here, there is a table full of projects that I've been working on this week. So I will take you through those. Let's have a little look. Let's actually start with a finished project. So my one finished project so far this year is my socks. I mentioned these in the last episode. They have been worn a little bit since then and they were not the strongest two-ply in the world, so they have started to pill a little bit, but that's fine. So they are just graduated socks. Starts at purple, goes through green, ends up at purple again. These were from hand-dyed fibre. I'm pretty sure it was BFL, but I did go through a stage of being terrible at labelling stuff, so I actually have no clue what it is. I'm pretty sure it's BFL though. Pretty straightforward. I used the Fish Lips Kiss heel, which I've never used before. I think I found it a little bit frustrating, feeling like I had to keep referring back to the cardboard foot blank that you make. But once I was through that and into the heel I think is really good and it's a really memorable heel. And I found that really quick and easy. And I also like the way that it folds. I might have mentioned this before, but I just think it folds really neatly. Whereas other hand knit socks, you try and kind of fold them sideways and they just don't quite sit right. These, because it's basically a tube with a kind of V shape on the top, fold really, really nicely. So you can pop them away in your drawer and they're all nice and neat. So that is my one finished project so far. This is one that came out of hibernation after I'd finished Handspun 17, and it's in my now one of 3 field bags. I have a system. I have a yellow one, a charcoal one, and a grey one. The grey one is kind of my current just pick it up and go project, like something that doesn't really need me to concentrate. The yellow one is going to be for more complex or big projects. And then the charcoal one is actually going to live upstairs. It's going to be my bedtime knitting. So this is a cowl which will eventually be joined that way. So like that, joined at the top with a Kitchener stitch. And my progress marker, I'm just trying to make sure I don't lose stitches. Progress marker's down there. So I've made a fairly significant amount of progress. Could have made more, apart from the fact that when I picked this back up, I went, oh, I wonder how many rows of each colour I was doing. And I totally miscounted. And I counted that I had been doing 5 rows. I had actually been doing the 6 rows. So I had to rip a big section out and redo it. I don't necessarily think anybody else would have noticed, but I noticed when I started looking at it. I was kind of looking back and I thought, that section seems quite a thin stripe. Why is that so thin? And then realised that every other stripe that I'd done after that was also that thin and didn't match the original. For a second, I did consider maybe doing a few more rows of the 5 stripes, then going to 4, then going to 3, then going to 2, and so on. I didn't do that. It was just annoying me so much that I needed to just undo the whole thing. So that's what I did. I'm going to stop this in 3 stitches time, otherwise I will just continue knitting right the way through this. I'll pick that up again in a moment. So I'm just trying to work on that any spare second that I have. The cats are mostly ignoring it. They're actually more interested in the bag because they like chewing on the strings of the bag. Safi in particular is a bit of a chewer. So I'm trying to discourage that. I've actually made them some rope toys that I'm hoping to try and distract them with when they start chewing on this. I'll just offer them their toys instead. So those are my 2 knitting projects that I've made some progress on. I've made a lot of progress on spinning, but I'm first of all going to show you a spinning project that I didn't mention in my recap of last year because I'd kind of completely forgotten that I'd done it. And that is this one. Again, I was really bad at labelling yarns, but I'm pretty sure that this was BFL. And it was hand-dyed fibre, I dyed it, and I was really happy with the way the colours had come out. I love these colours together. There's just something really nice about it. It's a kind of slightly greeny greyish. There's a turquoise, there's a darker blue. I just really like it. The reason that I completely forgot that I had finished this and then remembered was when I was talking about having sold 2 of my spinning wheels, I thought, hang on a minute, didn't I have to finish a project that was on the Sidekick? Yeah, I did. It was this one. So that was the one that I forgot to mention in my recap of last year. But it has now had its little moment in the spotlight. Don't know what else to say really. It's a chain ply. It's come out roughly the kind of weight that I would want. It will probably be socks, I think. I am finding that I'm wearing hand knit socks a lot more now that I'm in this house. In my other house, it was kind of cold and a little bit damp. So I used to have to wear like really big, the Ysolda Kajiti slippers. Probably completely butchered that pronunciation, but there you go. I used to wear those a lot. Now I'm finding that I'm wearing hand knit socks way more. So that is my forgotten skein of yarn that I spun last year, and one of very few skeins of yarn I spun last year. But hey, it's had its moment now. That's done. I have also made a load of progress on a very long-term project. It's kind of embarrassing how long this ended up taking. So I started this project on my Shack Matchless, and the reason I picked it up again at the time that I did was I felt like it was possibly a little bit easier to get the cats used to the Matchless than it would be to get them used to the mini spinner, because the mini spinner involves cables and stuff. I decided to get the Matchless out, and what was on the Matchless was one of the singles for these. It was actually the singles for this one, and I just steamrolled through it. I'd already spun 3 of the 4 bobbins, so these are both 2-ply, roughly lace weight, although this is very definitely lace weight. This is slightly more towards the heavy lace / fingering weight. The idea was to stripe them to do something like a featherweight cardi, that kind of thing. I don't know whether I'm using exactly that pattern, but something along those lines, just a really light cardigan. So I'd already spun 3 of the 4 bobbins, and there was 1 single of this one still left on the wheel. So I got that one out, started spinning it again. Because the wheel was on double drive, none of the settings have really changed. So I think the difference in weight is probably just my feet and my hands moving at a different speed. When I finished this, I looked up, when did I actually start doing this? I found an Instagram post of this one of the singles from this, 2.5 years ago. Obviously, I wasn't spinning continuously on them. Probably a few months, I'm trying to think. I would have been switching a lot between the matchless and the sidekick at that point, and then in 2016, summer 2016, I got my mini spinner, so I was spinning a lot more on that. So yeah, these were not continuous, but they did take a heck of a long time. The Fibre is from Wingham's. I went and visited Wingham's when I got my Ashford Joy, and I bought this there. It's merino, and yeah, I'm really, really happy with how it's come out. I'm especially happy with the green because I have never got that kind of yardage from 100 grams in my life. So that's a huge achievement. I'm really, really happy with that one. I'm happy with the twist. I'm happy with all of it. It's all good. This one, slightly heavier weight, a little bit less consistent, but they were spun 2.5 years apart, so I'm fine with that. The interesting thing was, because this had been resting on the bobbin for so long, there was practically no energy in it whatsoever. It was totally dead. I'm pretty sure you could have taken the whole thing off the bobbin and it just would have hung completely straight. So I pretty much just had to throw it at the wheel and put in as much twist as I thought it maybe needed. Real kind of guesstimate job, but I was completely prepared to put it back through the wheel and add or take out twist. But as it is, I don't think that's necessary. I think that is going to work perfectly fine for my purposes. So yeah, hopefully these two will be striped into some kind of lightweight cardigan or something. Technically, I think there's just about enough to do the smallest size of the featherweight in just this one alone. But I do like the idea of combining it with this somehow, even if it's just like the cuffs and the border in this and the rest of it in that one. I don't know. I'll play around. I'm going to swatch them together and see what the difference is in gauge between the two. If there's not a really significant difference, then I will just stripe them. So that's those. So then, having been victorious over those two yarns, I then got started on another project that I think I'd probably set up around this time last year, which was the Doodler. Now, originally, I had dyed the fibre for this, and the idea was that I was going to do 2-ply. I changed my mind. I started spinning some singles a while ago, and I just thought, actually, it's made for a singles yarn. I think the sample is knit with hedgehog skinny singles, so it's written for a singles yarn. I could probably use a singles yarn, and singles goes really quickly. So I felt like that was a good enough excuse to try and go with singles. What I did want to do was to try and do a sample to thicken up my yarn, because I'd literally just come off spinning these, which are super, super thin. So I decided to do a sample. I just grabbed whatever fibre I could find, which was this. I think this might be Shetland. Again, this is from my phase of not bothering to label things. And I spun the singles. I think I'm pretty happy with how thick it came out. I spun this all in one morning at Make in Plymouth, and yeah, it's come out really nicely. I finished spinning it, soaked it, got it up to dry, and then I did my swatch, which looks like this. and it's nice and drapey. It's got air between the stitches, but I think it's an appropriate weight of yarn for the doodler. So I then started spinning the actual fibre with the same settings on the mini spinner. And this is the first of those. It is in a plastic bowl because it's still wet. I was soaking this. There is, I think, more twist in this than I intended. I'm gonna see how it dries out, because it's kind of hard to tell at this stage whether it's too thick. I think in places it might be, but I'm generally pretty happy with it. And also whether there is too much twist. If there is too much twist, I will just run it through the wheel again, take some twist out, and then refinish the yarn. I'll give it a try as it is though. I did use the same settings on the mini spinner, but I had the cats to deal with when I was spinning this, where I didn't when I was spinning the purple. So it may have just been that it was taking me longer to actually get it to the orifice than it had been when I was spinning without their help. So that's that one. As I say, still wet, so I don't want to get this all over the place, but it's looking okay. It's definitely a little bit on the sort of curly side in certain places, but I don't know how much that's going to relax as it dries. We'll see. We'll see. I'm not going to weight it or anything, because I think that weighting yarn just kind of gives you a false impression of what you're going to end up with as a finished product. So I would rather just hang it, let it dry straight, and see what happens. Like I say, if I do need to take some twist out, that's not a massive problem. So that's what I'm working on at the moment. I've then got the two other colours of fibre to do. So the two other colours are these two. So kind of a dark, slightly petrol-y coloured grey, and then a very light grey. So those are going to be my next two yarns to spin. These were dyed quite some time ago, so they have slightly felted, but it's been absolutely fine to spin. They've just got some little bobbly bits that I need to just pick off as I go through. So those will be my next two yarns to spin. I'm going to try and keep a little bit of a closer eye on how much twist is going in, because I do feel like that yellow one was a little bit over twisted compared to the purple. Having said that, the purple was different fibre, so that could also affect it. When it comes to settings on the mini spinner, the way that I currently mark those settings is just a really basic piece of masking tape, and then I just mark with a Sharpie where the dial is. It did get me thinking though about the Hanson Crafts LCD, which is an accessory that they have which plugs into your mini spinner, and it gives you a readout of how many revolutions per minute and also the torque. So with those two settings, you should be able to consistently do the same yarn. It will help you figure out twist per inch and all sorts of stuff. So that was kind of interesting. The only problem is that because of when I bought my mini spinner, they hadn't at that stage started putting the parts in place to be able to later add that LCD. So for example, on the rear of the faceplate of the mini spinner, they now put a little channel, like a 3mm wide channel that goes down the back of the face of the mini spinner. That's there to put the tachometer sensors in, and then you have to have magnets fitted to the flyers. Everything from, I think it was like June or July of 2016, has magnets in the flyers. Mine doesn't. I must have just missed having those in. So it would mean for me sending my mini spinner, or possibly just the faceplate, back to Hanson Crafts for them to cut that channel and fit the tachometer sensors. I'm kind of debating whether I want to try and get my stepdad to do it for me, because he has woodworking tools. I don't know. I don't know that I could ask somebody else to take responsibility for my mini spinner. So I was thinking about it. Kevin from Hanson Crafts was fantastic and emailed me a couple of times to kind of outline the options. At first I thought, okay, it's going to be a question of sending back the mini spinner, the whole mini spinner and all the flyers to get the magnets put in. He can actually send out a template and a drill bit so that you can fit the magnets yourself. I've read the instructions, it looks like it's pretty simple, but as I say, for me, it also involves cutting into the mini spinner, so that's the bit that I'm not really prepared to do. So, I don't know, I could do that. The other option is I could get a Mini Spinner Pro. I've always felt like with the difference between the Mini Spinner and the Mini Spinner Pro, basically it's a stronger motor and there's more torque. So in other words, you can have quite a high brake band tension and quite a slow speed on the flyer and it will just keep going. Whereas the current one, there would be too much load on the motor and it would shut down. I've never yet reached a limit of that. So I've never been in a situation where I'm spinning yarn and the mini spinner's not been up to it and it's cut out. I did experience that once while I was spinning those singles that I showed you, because the fly was on a very, very slow speed and I had a little tiny bit too much brake tension on there and it cuts the motor out and gives you little warning flashes to let you know what the problem is. I still don't know about the Pro. It does have some cool features that I could see myself using definitely when it comes to that LCD display, but it's a ton of money. So at the moment it's kind of a toss-up between I could send the faceplate of my mini spinner back to Hanson Crafts, which would take about 3 or 4 weeks for them to turn it around and get it back to me. Therefore I would be without the mini spinner for about 3 or 4 weeks. The other alternative is to spend a ton of money and get an entirely new mini spinner. I don't know. It's a lot of money. I don't think I can justify it, but we'll see. One question that I wanted to address from the last episode came from Valerie, who was asking about the cost of import tax specifically on AcreWorks orders, but this applies to anything else that you're importing from the US to the UK. For those who aren't aware, our VAT rate, so our kind of sales tax in the UK is currently 20%. So in order to be on the safe side, I tend to add about 25% to the cost of anything that I have to import from the US. That has to include the shipping charge because you do get taxed on the shipping charge as well. So if I do that, sometimes it's an overestimate, but I'd rather overestimate and be prepared to pay £300 and then only get billed £200. I'd rather it be that way around than the other way around. So 25% is a good guideline if you're trying to work out import tax. It's not just the tax, because you also get charged a handling fee and a customs fee and all that stuff. So 25% tends to cover it. I don't think I've ever been in a situation where I've been charged a lot more than I estimated. So it should give you a good guideline. Consequently, with things like AcreWorks orders, I do tend to wait until I've got quite a big purchase to do with them before I place an order, because otherwise I'd just be paying handling charges for very, very small orders and it's just not worth it. So the next order will probably be whenever they release the Niddy Noddy that they're working on. If you haven't seen it yet, go and check out the Ravelry group. There's a thread on there for testers sign up. Unfortunately, I can't sign up as a tester because I'm not in the US, and to keep their costs down, they tend to do all their testing with US customers, which is totally fair enough, but I would love to test this out. It's basically a niddy-noddy that's mounted and that has a handle. So all your arm's going to have to do is kind of feed the yarn across like this. Your other hand can be turning the handle and you'll just be doing this. So I'm really, really looking forward to seeing how that works. If all goes according to plan, I will absolutely buy one, because even just doing the skeins of this one the other day, my arm was getting really tired, and I don't even have particular sort of mobility issues. I can imagine for those of you who do, I just can't imagine the pain that you must be in after you've done something like that. So I also want to talk about some changes that are going to be coming to this YouTube channel. Don't worry, I'm still going to be doing these kind of project catch-up episodes because I enjoy them. I think it keeps me on track with what I'm trying to do. Hopefully it's useful and interesting to you as well. But what I do want to start doing is more small, short episodes on various different topics. So things like reviews, tutorials, that kind of stuff. I want to do those as separate short videos, because when I look at my YouTube analytics, a lot of times the searches that people have put in that have led them to this channel are things like Acreworks bobbin review, Hands Across mini spinner review, that kind of stuff. And at the moment, they have to wade through an entire podcast episode to get to that content. In some ways that works, but I think it would be less frustrating for people if they could just get to just that review on its own. So I have recorded a couple of shorter videos. One of them is already up, which was the look at what I carry inside my Zuka case that I use for my mini spinner. That one's already up. I will put a link up here so that you can go and watch it. If you've seen that one, let me know what you think in the comments, either here or on that video. I would love to know what you think about the smaller, shorter formats. The other hope is that it will make it a little bit easier for me to feel like I'm keeping on track with video content. I like doing the video content, but it can take a long time. I think if I can shoot a whole load of short videos in these weeks off that I have, and then just edit them gradually over the course of a month or so, that would help me to keep on track. And then I would also aim to do a podcast episode at least once a month. So some of the other videos that I've shot, I've got some tips and tricks on destashing your yarn or your craft supplies. I actually shot the entire yarn destash that I did before I moved house. So I have a short tips and tricks video and then the longer one where you can see my whole process. I've also shot a video about oiling and maintaining your Shack to Matchless. I did a complete clean and Danish oil of the Matchless. So I shot that. That's going to be available as a separate video. And also I just bought another bag for the mini spinner, which is this one. It's kind of big. It's the eBags Crew Cooler 2. I know there are other review videos of this one in relation to the mini spinner on YouTube, but I might have some slightly different stuff. You might be kind of interested to see whether all of that fits. And it's always useful to get more than one person's opinion. So I will be shooting and editing that one immediately after I have done this podcast. So look out for the video. But in short, it's a very useful bag. It's actually supposed to be a cooler bag. So there's a big compartment there. There's a top compartment that fits things like the battery and laser case and the maintenance kit and that stuff. So I will do a review of that one and that will be posted on this channel. Basically, I bought that one because there are times when I need to be able to cycle with my mini spinner and I can't think of a way of attaching the Zuka to my bike. So I needed to find something that would fit into one of the bags that I have for the bike. And the eBags Crew Cooler 2 does fit. So yeah, let me know what you think about the idea of doing those smaller, shorter videos. I definitely want to do more in the way of tutorials. I feel like a lot of what I do and a lot of what I talk about is kind of reviews of stuff, which I think is useful, but I think there's more kind of education that I can do when it comes to actual technique. So I want to start doing more of that, but I will still be doing these podcast episodes. As I say, I think it keeps me on track. I think it helps me to stay connected with everybody as well. So that's it for another episode of Tiny Fibre Studio. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope it's been useful for you. Let me know what you're working on at the moment. I'd love to kind of catch up with some people. Also, let me know if you're on Instagram. I tend to do a lot of Instagram feed browsing, so it's really easy for me to keep up with people's projects on there. So in between now and the next episode, you can find me on Instagram as Tiny Fibre Studio and also on Ravelry as Becks. So I hope this episode was useful for you, and I'll see you again on the next episode.